The Draft Childminding and Daycare Exceptions Wales Order 2026 and the proposal for a voluntary approval scheme for childcare, playwork and activity providers was launched by Welsh Government in August and will close on the 3rd of November this year. As the national organisation for Out of School Childcare, Clybiau Plant Cymru Kids Clubs will be focusing on proposed changes most likely to affect the out of school childcare sector. There are others relating to nannies, au pairs and babysitters, for example. It is important that you reflect on the potential impacts for the out-of-school childcare sector, children and families and others, and respond directly to Welsh Government, outlining whether you agree or disagree and why by the 3rd of November. The current exceptions order sets out when registration as a childminder or daycare provider is not required. Being exempt means that providers do not need to register with Care Inspectorate Wales, comply with the childminding and daycare regulations, or have regard to the national minimum standards for regulated childcare for children up to the age of 12 years. The Welsh Government is reviewing these exceptions to check if they are proportionate. So the purpose is to gather views on Part A, the proposed changes to the existing exceptions to registration, i.e. when providers do not need to register. Part B, the development of a voluntary approval scheme for childcare and activity providers who are exempt from mandatory registration. And Part C, the impact of the changes, particularly those most affected by potential changes. The aims of the review of the exceptions order are to ensure childcare options are child-centred and foster the rights of children to play, relax, learn and join groups and organisations that meet their needs and interests. Ensure that the exceptions in place are proportionate and exempt those who don't need to register. Promote robust safety measures for children across all childcare, playwork and activity settings, supporting children to be safe and properly cared for. Support affordable, accessible and flexible childcare, playwork and activities for families to meet various needs, interests and demands across Wales. Any changes to the exceptions must not reduce available or affordable childcare, play or activities. And lastly, to simplify the exceptions order for clarity and consistency in interpretation. The full documents, including easy read, children's versions and response forms, can be found using this QR code. It's really important that as many people in our sector as possible understands the proposed changes and respond. As we go through this presentation, please consider the potential impact of the proposed changes and voluntary approval scheme, both positive and negative, included on the following factors. We will make available a recording so settings can use it with their wider team to discuss and reflect and form their own response to Welsh Government. Part A, coaching and tuition. Currently, providers of coaching or tuition in sport, performing arts, arts and crafts, school study or homework support, or religious or cultural study do not need to register if they offer just one or two types of activities from this list, or if they coach and tutor under 5-year-olds for no more than 4 hours a day. The proposal under these draft proposals are that children aged 4 or under can only attend for a maximum of 2 hours in any one day if parents are not present. Children aged 5 and over would still be able to attend for an unspecified period of time. So question 5 within the consultation documents, do you agree or disagree? What do you think may be the potential impacts on children's families and providers? You could play back a recording of this and pause the recording to discuss, reflect and respond with your wider team. Do you agree or disagree that 2 hours is the appropriate time for children aged 4 and under to be able to attend coaching and tuition without parents and without the provider needing to register? Do you agree or disagree that age 4 and under is the appropriate age range that children should be treated separately in relation to coaching and tuition. So currently, providers can offer 2 types of activities without the need to register. However, the Welsh Government's engagement work suggests that offering more than one type weakens the focus on coaching and tuition, making it more like daycare. The proposal is that providers could still offer a variety of activities within that single type. For example, if you were operating under the category of sports, you could still deliver a number of different sports without needing to register as daycare providers. However, offering more than one type, such as sports and the arts, would require registration. This aims to clarify the boundary between childcare and playwork and coaching or tuition. It is also being proposed that the categories of activity type should be amended as follows: from sport, performing arts, arts and crafts, school study or homework support, and religious or cultural study, to the proposed categories, which are sport, expressive and creative arts, educational support, including languages, literacy and communication, humanities, science and technology, mathematics and numeracy, health and well-being, and religious or cultural study. Question 6. Do you agree, disagree with amending the categories of coaching and tuition? And question 7. Do you agree, disagree that providers can only offer one type of activity, for example, sports or the arts, but not both? What do you think may be the potential impacts on children's families and providers? Again, you could play back a recording of this and pause the recording to discuss, reflect, and respond with your wider team. Moving on to suspended providers. Care Inspectorate Wales can suspend providers when there are safeguarding concerns and when they have reasonable cause to believe that the continued provision of care exposes or could expose children to the risk of harm, and suspension is needed to allow time for investigations to be carried out or for steps to be taken to reduce or eliminate the risk of harm. Suspensions can happen for many reasons, such as not complying with regulatory requirements and for operating on unsuitable premises. Do you agree or disagree that if a registered provider is suspended by enforcement, the provider cannot run for 2 hours or less per day for the duration of the suspension? This would be a good time to pause a playback of a recording of this and discuss, reflect, and respond with your team. Children aged 2 and under. Currently, registration is not required if care is 2 hours or less per day, care 5 days or less per calendar year, coaching or tuition is in 1 or 2 types of activity only, and the children under 5 don't attend for more than 4 hours per day. It's proposed that children aged 2 and under, where the parent is not in or around the same building, would be required to register with CIW, even for 2 hours or less. This is being considered due to the higher care needs of younger children. This would mean that childcare, playwork and activities for children aged 2 and under, and where the parent is not present, would be required to register with Care Inspectorate Wales. If there is support for the proposal that all childminding and daycare for children aged 2 and under, including coaching and tuition, even for less than 2 hours, should require registration, this will be considered alongside responses to the proposed changes around exceptions for coaching and tuition for children under age 4 and under. This means that if both proposals are adopted, coaching and tuition providers would need to register if they care for children aged 2 and under without a parent present, while children aged 3 and 4 could attend such provision up to 2 hours without a parent. Children aged 5 and above could attend coaching and tuition for an unspecified period of time. Provision could, however, be built into relevant exceptions so that there would not be the requirement to register if parents stay on the premises, which sometimes happens for services offering wellness or learning for parents. Although these proposals are not featured in the 2026 Draft Exceptions Order, the Welsh Government would like to seek the public's view in relation to these possible changes. While this change could enhance oversight and quality assurance, it may also introduce new challenges for some providers. Question 10. Do you agree, disagree that providers offering childcare or coaching tuition activities for children aged 2 and under, where the parent is not present, should register with CIW, even if care is for 2 hours or less per day or 5 days or less per year? Question 11. Do you agree, disagree that providers offering childcare or coaching or tuition for children aged 2 and under, where parents remain on the premises but not present during the session, should register, even if the care is for 2 hours or less or 5 days or fewer a year? What do you think may be the potential impacts on children's families and providers? This would be a good time to discuss, reflect, and respond with your team. Consider, are there any further comments or thoughts? The draft Childminding and Daycare Exceptions Wales Order 2026 and the proposal for a voluntary approval scheme for childcare, playwork and activity providers was launched by Welsh Government and will close on the 3rd of November this year. Part B. Part B considers the proposed voluntary approval scheme. This is for providers not required to register by law, but who want approval under the scheme. The review of the exceptions has explored the need for a voluntary or light touch register or approval scheme for unregistered providers, creating a voluntary approval scheme in Wales similar to the existing scheme for nannies and au pairs. The aims would be to give access to tax-free childcare and universal credit childcare, verify set approval criteria is met, including basic safety checks, offering some reassurance, awareness of and support to providers. Question 3 of the consultation refers to, do you agree or disagree with the aims of the proposed scheme? What do you think may be the potential impacts on children, families, providers and others? You could play back a recording of this and pause the recording to discuss, reflect and respond with your wider team. Question 14. Which of the criteria should be required? It is proposed that the applicant or joint applicant must provide evidence of the following: being 18 plus, holding emergency paediatric first aid, safeguarding level 2 or group B, childcare essentials training, enhanced DBS and not barred from working with children, public liability insurance. A self-declaration confirming, and this self-declaration is not checked, an understanding of safeguarding code, safe recruitment, complaints and risk assessments, food hygiene if food handling, following best practice on staffing, premises, records, safety, health and well-being. Are there any other criteria that you think should be included? This is question 15 of the consultation. Management and oversight of the scheme. Question 16, which of the features would be proportionate as part of management and oversight of the scheme? The scheme would be managed by Care Inspectorate Wales, the CIW. This would be administrative, meaning the CIW would not be required to inspect and there would be no quality judgments from CIW. They would not become involved in day-to-day complaints regarding the approved provider. The approved provider would be required to renew annually and there would be an annual fee. Details of the approved provider would be passed on to local authorities. Approved providers could then receive support, information, advertising and guidance from the local authority should they wish. CIW could refuse or withdraw applications if the approval criteria are not or no longer met. In the event of a safeguarding concern, CIW would not undertake any investigation or inspection and would liaise with the local authority carrying out the safeguarding process to establish the outcome. CIW will then decide on an appropriate response in relation to ongoing approval. They could suspend, approve, or withdraw an approved provider if the outcome concluded the provider exposes or may expose children to the risk of harm. Sorry, I'm going to repeat that. They could suspend approval or withdraw an approved provider if the outcome concluded the provider exposes or may expose children to the risk of harm. CIW will decide on an appropriate response, suspend or withdraw approval if necessary. Notices of any decisions to suspend, withdraw, or refuse an application would have 28 days to make an appeal. The approved provider would be required to renew annually, and there would be an annual fee. The approved provider would be required to notify CIW in the event of a conviction, caution, change of name, address, or contact details. How do you think this may impact the out-of-school childcare sector and any children, families and others? Discuss, reflect and respond with your wider teams. Eligible provider types. Question 17 refers to which of these, or which of the following, do you think should be eligible to seek approval on the proposed scheme? Local authority or school-run care for 2 hours or less. Childcare for 2 hours or less either side of the school day. Childcare for 2 hours or less at any point of the day. Home-based childcare, that's babysitters, nannies, au pairs. In-person coaching or tuition for more than 2 hours in the defined categories we discussed in Part A. This includes residential care activity camps for less than 28 days per 365-day period and not facilitated or arranged by schools during term and where parents are not present. Providers including coaching and tuition operating 5 days or fewer per year. Childcare for 12 to 16-year-olds. Question 18. Do you agree or disagree with the principle that the scheme should have a joining fee for providers who seek approval on the voluntary approval scheme? The joining fee for the voluntary part of the childcare register in England, for example, is £114. Question 19, do you agree or disagree that a voluntary approval scheme should be developed for Wales? Again, play back a recording of this and pause the recording to discuss, reflect and respond with your team on this question as part of the consultation. So the next steps, it's really important that out-of-school childcare clubs respond by the 3rd of November, both registered and unregistered. Full consultation documents and response forms can be found on the Welsh Government site or using this QR code. It's really important that you understand the proposed changes and respond directly. Please get in touch with any views you feel are important to share with us. Responses will be analysed and will help determine whether a voluntary approval scheme is developed, and if so, what that would look like. Further consultations may follow if needed. Advice will go to Welsh Government ministers, and any changes to the order would not be made until 2026-2027 at the earliest. Providers who would need to register due to the changes would get a full year to do this. Thank you for your time.